He's a controversial figure. In the mid-1990s, he served as the country's deputy prime minister. But after a bitter feud with the government, he was sacked and later jailed. He was again sent to prison in 2015. But in an extraordinary twist of events, the man who put him behind bars the first time around announced he would like to join forces for the elections in May. And after a stunning result, Malaysia's most famous political prisoner is set to make his return to politics, promising a new dawn. I'm Anwar, and I'm speaking to what some believe is a prime minister in waiting. Anwar Ibrahim, one-on-one. Anwar Ibrahim, congratulations. This is a double victory for you. But let's start off with the historic elections. Many around the world were surprised with the outcome. Were you surprised that your coalition won the elections?
Yes, pleasantly surprised, although I would have expected that we would win by a small majority based on the results of the last elections in 2013, where we managed to muster 52% of the popular vote. But this was really fantastic.
How does it feel to finally have your party win an election?
Well, I said jubilant and ecstatic in a way, because nobody actually anticipated that. But they deserve it. Our friends have struggled from '98, have endured imprisonment. Not me alone. I mean, hundreds and thousands have been, removed from their jobs and encountered so much difficulties. So they deserve the win.
You talked about prison. That's your second victory. But when you look at the past 2 decades, nearly half of that time was spent in prison. How does this make you feel?
Wiser, more patient, and more determined to continue to ensure that there is democratic accountability in this country, rid the country of these corrupt elements, and champion the rights of the common people.
Do you feel that your time spent behind bars was worth it?
Well, there's a price one has to pay. It's not, we don't choose to do that. I have to endure the pain, but also Aziza and the children and many loyal friends. But now that's partly over, almost over, and we have tasted the meaning of freedom and victory, we have to deliver. We have to be truly accountable and responsible in our actions.
Were you ever given the opportunity for cooperation in exchange for a deal for your freedom?
Not really, although Najib did communicate, because prior to my surgery, I was reluctant to have anything done here because of the risk involved. I was offered by Georgetown University Hospital, where I taught before, and of course Turkey, which I thought would be excellent, but then they did not give permission. So Najib did communicate to assure that they will not interfere in the medical treatment.
What did you miss most when you were in prison?
Of course, the family, the freedom. You can only understand and appreciate the meaning of freedom when you experience incarceration. And you miss, of course, the family, you miss, of course, you miss the little things, the food, everything, because you are denied all the facilities and opportunities and the love and the affection that you have outside.
What was your darkest hour, both politically and personally?
Well, when you get the second thrown into prison and assaulted to near death, that was really dark. I mean, figuratively and practically, we experienced that. But that's gone and passed, and I've recovered and came back in style.
Very much so. In 2013, you won the popular vote, yet you lost the election. Was that one of your darkest hours politically? Did everything seem to be uphill after that?
No, for a period when the Islamic Party left, and seemed to be closer to UMNO, the ruling party. That seemed to be more complex. And I was in jail, not doing much. And the general guidance of the Islamic Party, who seemed to be most close to us, died. So it all came at the same time that led to the growing perception about the negativity of the ruling coalition, the opposition coalition.
When you look at it in a remarkable turn of events, Dr. Mahathir, your political mentor, but also the man who put you behind bars in the first place, reached out to you and proposed a coalition for this election. He would not wanted to join forces. How did this unlikely partnership begin?
It's difficult. I mean, I think it's difficult for me and the family and friends. There's so much bitterness, and it's been going on for decades. But when he came to see me when I was in prison, but then in court, he showed his willingness to become friends and move forward. And I was very civil and accepted that, although we did not venture into any sort of a collaboration or any interest, beyond saying that there is a serious problem in this country with endemic corruption and abuse of power. But the following meeting was more substantive in terms of forging a new coalition. I agreed in principle, although I was a bit still wary about the commitment to the reform, where the judiciary should be independent, media should be free, and the economy should be focused on elevating the rights of the common people, not to be robbed and squandered by the few.
Was it difficult to forgive him?
Forgive, I've forgiven. I mean, easy. I mean, Najib, I have forgiven. Not for the crimes he committed to the nation, for squandering billions, but for putting me in jail, for the conspiracy to deny me my rights. That I'm okay. I mean, I think he now is probably in a bad shape himself. I will not pursue the issue of my unjust incarceration. But the funds squandered from the people, that he must be accountable.
Najib Razak could be regarded as political aristocracy in this country, yet his reputation took a big hit when he was accused of funneling hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, from the State Investment Fund into his personal account. How is the new government going to deal with this?
We have conducted aggressive investigations. We have exposed the excesses, and you have seen some media reports on the wealth accumulated, the opulence and luxury in these houses. So you can sense the beginning, which is very effective. But then we have, of course, an international team to contact the Americans, the Swiss, and the rest, which have actually begun.
I want to go back to Dr. Mahathir right now. He said that you two shared a common objective. One of those objectives could be defeating Najib Razak. But now that that objective has been achieved, are you fearful that some old feelings might resurface? Or have you completely buried the hatchet, as you said?
I have, and I believe he has, because in my conversation you can sense, whether one in a private conversation one feel at ease and friendly and with some affection, or just civil and some semblance of hostility. I don't sense that, except to view it in the positive. I cannot deny the fact that people surrounding us may have still such inhibitions, but as long as I can continue personal relations with him, I don't foresee much difficulty.
If you could tell me once again how you buried the hatchet with Dr. Mahathir.
It's not difficult, because after all you suffered, you have endured suffering. If you get angry, you can, but that's another form of suffering, the sickness of the heart. And I don't intend to do that. I want to be happy, I want to be merciful, but I want to make sure that the country seems to be, can be able to grow and at the same time to use the resources to assist the poor and the underprivileged in this country.
Are these virtues that you learned in prison?
Well, I was in prison because of these virtues. I fortified my commitment in prison, and there's no way can I concede now about the need to reform this country.
What happens if he's not able to fulfill his promises or goes back on his word?
For now, we have no reason to question his commitment, and we are working as a team. The vast majority were the old players who are committed to the reform agenda, and he has committed himself and subscribed to that agenda. And many of the cabinet members who have been appointed seems to be of the same view.
How confident are you that this alliance will last?
You see, the alliance we forged in the beginning in 2008 lasted till about 2015, 2013, and 2015, I'm sorry. And now the alliance is further enhanced and through the participations of Mahathir's party. And what is important in the alliance is the common agenda, as a common platform.
But was the common platform to defeat Najib, or was it to bring reform?
It's both. To defeat Najib and to bring reform. And we have articulated in a very detailed manner judiciary, media, economic, multiracialism, position of Islam and language policy. All these things are quite resolved as a policy matter. But as a multiracial, multireligious country, we do acknowledge that we have to be extremely wise and patient in dealing with many of these issues.
When you look at Malaysia, it is a multicultural, multi-religious country, relatively peaceful and prosperous. Do you think that the rest of the world has the right understanding of your country?
Some do. I mean, if the relationship is close, then they can have very well understand it better. But of course, most countries consider these countries as homogeneous, monolithic, and some consider it as Islamic State. There was a lot of this confusion, which is not the case. But I think it will take time, and we should play a more effective role internationally, which we used to do, but not in the last 10 years.
You refer to a new era, a new dawn for Malaysia. So paint me a picture on how you see the country.
It's a breath of fresh air. People don't feel intimidated. They can speak their minds. The obsolete draconian laws will be repealed. Initial action or investigations, aggressive investigations have been undertaken against Najib. So I think there are clear signs. You can see that people feel pretty relaxed. Look, everybody's talking rather freely. And the media is no longer newspeak, but the media seems to be, quite free. I've seen opposition leaders, the ex-UMNO, speaking and giving their views on the media, which was unheard of in the past.
Okay. So what are your plans to sort of achieve this?
My plan is to rest and go for fellowship in universities and assist the government. So it has to be Mahathir's plan internationally. But knowing him, working with him, I think given the initial month, he will certainly explore and expand the possibility of working or articulating issues internationally.
I want to go back to one of the questions about the results of the election. The people obviously wanted change. What are some of the main changes that you are ready to provide them?
What the government has committed is clean up the excesses, the corrupt elements, and strengthen the institutions, as I've said. But what they have to do as a priority, of course, to alleviate the hardships, the economic hardships of the people, in terms of partly poverty eradication, partly creating more opportunities for the have-nots, the poor and the marginalized. But finally, what is critical for us is to boost and increase the wealth of the nation and be more just in terms of its distribution.
But one day you will be given the prime ministership. Have you talked about that transfer of power?
Well, it is the consensus in the coalition party, Pakatan Harapan, and they talk about between 1 to 2 years. So we did not actually have a definite time frame, but I think I will be fine with that.
How are you going to spend the next 2 years of your life?
More time with my family, since my wife is the Deputy Prime Minister. Travel abroad to Turkey, to Indonesia tomorrow, in fact, because they have their reform, 20 years of reformasi. And then, of course, the States for speaking engagements. But I'll come back. I'm a village leader. So I have my roots here, and I will, of course, be based here. I mean, I miss my friends, and I miss visiting the country, and I don't think I should waste too much time or spend too much time overseas.
How would you address those critics who would say that once you become Prime Minister, there will be a lot of your close inner circle involved in the country's leadership?
Inner circle. I mean, of course, there are some people who are involved in the party, supportive of the party. I mean, you met the new economy Minister for Economy. He's a close associate, but he's a deputy president of the party and a chief minister of a state, competent and therefore selected. And similarly, if I were to assume office as prime minister, I would select competent people that I know and tested, be able to manage the affairs of this country.
What roles would your wife and your daughters play?
Right now, my wife is in the government. My daughter opted out of it, not willing to serve now because she says one member of the family is enough in the government. So, so I said, be it. I mean, she is director of elections of the party, and she could claim some credit for that.
Let's go a little bit into the economy and to the past. In the 1990s, when you served as finance minister, your position was that it's been regarded as Western-leaning, free market-oriented, but there's also led to some criticism that you were willing to sort of accept the harsh demands by the IMF during, obviously, the financial crisis of 1997. What would be your response to those critics?
Well, I chaired the Development Committee of the World Bank and the IMF, and therefore my relations with the IMF, the World Bank, seems cordial. But we were never, we did not reach the extent on the stage where we had to resort to IMF build-out. So there's no issue at all. The perception is that we accept. We do not. We were not compelled, under like most countries, to have to resort to IMF bailout. We did not. Secondly, I would imagine it's necessary, given the precarious economic hardships then, to maintain good relations with international agencies and also other countries. But the perception is different. The perception is I then conceded and accepted the IMF preconditions. We never reached that condition. It was a bad shape, but short of having to resort to borrowing from the IMF.
Back in 1998, when You had been widely reported to have close ties with some of the country's top corporations. And yet in the years since your downfall, you maintained that you had tried to reform the political system from within, and that you were trying to disentangle these close ties between the corporation and the ruling party. If that were true, why didn't you just simply and publicly cut your ties with these companies?
Well, we operated under a given system those days. What was important is that you do not have a personal interest in these companies, neither do you have proxies or nominees. Now, having said that, after 2 decades, things just have to change. People understand the need for transparency and to avoid any sort of a conflict of interest. And I think that seems to be the popular view, and we are committed to that.
You served as the country's former finance minister. What do you think the top priorities of the new government should be?
It has to be governance. You know, you have to strengthen the institutions of governance. Clear the functions of parliament, executive and the judiciary. The judiciary should not be compliant, working under the executive, under the thumbs of the executive. The media should not be compliant. I mean, these are central issues that people want to see. But more critically is the economic hardship. We have never sensed the anger due to the spiraling price increases that has led to this major shift pattern in this country.
Does Malaysia still need a race-based affirmative action program to help the Malays?
My position has been clear. It should be a transparent system. Affirmative action means you help the poor, underprivileged, marginalized, irrespective of race. Therefore, I have called for the dismantling of the new economic policy since 2007.
So how do you convince the rural Malays of this then?
You convince by having leaders who are competent, who speak up on their behalf. You convince by making sure some of the wealth that they have squandered is shared by the many. And the difference between our position, our approach, and the new economic policy as envisaged by the ruling party is to broaden the base, to allow more people to benefit compared to what the government then had to offer.
The new government has made grand promises about eliminating the goods and services tax, increasing fuel subsidies, and continuing the direct financial assistance programs for the poor. Many say this will actually balloon the country's deficit.
Yes, in theory you look at it in a vacuum, or then it may be seen or deemed to be bloated. But then we start by cleaning up the mess. The Auditor General's report annually suggests that our losses would come up to 20 billion, 25 billion ringgit a year because of leakages, corruption, and this has to stop. If this stops, then we are able to save between 10 to 15 billion a year. Now with that, we can then reduce the dependence on oil, but oil is a major revenue, but it has increased. You see? So you have to look at that prospect too, because oil was much lower when the previous government announced their budget, and much higher now.
Anwar Ibrahim, thank you very much for speaking to TRT World.
Tashakur.